It began as an ordinary Tuesday, a bright, clear, late summer morning. For millions of Americans, September 11, 2001 started with the familiar routines of life: commuting to work, dropping kids at school, planning for the day ahead. The biggest concern for many was the weather or the morning traffic. But in the span of 102 minutes, that ordinary world vanished, replaced by a new, uncertain reality. The terrorist attacks of that day were not just a tragedy of unimaginable scale, they were a historical fault line. In the space of a single morning, the 20th century truly ended, and a new, more complex, and more fearful century began. The events themselves were stark and horrifying, but their true impact would unfold in the days, months, and years that followed, reshaping the very fabric of American life in ways both profound and subtle. This is the story of how a single day transformed a nation's politics, its security, its culture, and its soul forever. The most immediate and visible transformation was in the realm of national security. Before 9/11, America's sense of invulnerability was, for many, a given. The country was protected by two vast oceans, a powerful military, and a general sense that large-scale attacks happened elsewhere in the world. The sight of commercial airliners, symbols of everyday travel and freedom, being used as weapons of mass destruction shattered that illusion completely. The threat was no longer a foreign army on a distant battlefield. It was invisible, decentralized, and capable of striking at the very heart of everyday life. The response was swift and monumental. Just over a month after the attacks, Congress passed the USA Patriot Act, a sweeping piece of legislation designed to break down the walls between intelligence and law enforcement agencies. Its goal was to prevent another attack by allowing for greater surveillance, wider information sharing, and enhanced investigative powers. For the first time on such a scale, national security and personal privacy began to be publicly weighed against each other. This new security paradigm led to the most significant reorganization of the federal government in half a century: the creation of the Department of Homeland Security. This new cabinet-level department merged 22 different federal agencies, from the Coast Guard to the Secret Service to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, under one massive umbrella. Its mission was singular and monumental: to prevent terrorist attacks within the United States. For the average American, the most tangible daily result of this new security state was the birth of the Transportation Security Administration, or TSA. Before 9/11, airport security was often handled by private contractors, and procedures were far more relaxed. Suddenly, flying became a different experience entirely. Shoes and laptops came out of bags, liquids were restricted, and identity checks became rigorous and mandatory. The friendly skies had become a fortified zone, a constant, low-level reminder that the world had changed. Security checkpoints also appeared in the most unexpected of places: government buildings, museums, sports stadiums, and even theaters. A level of scrutiny that was once reserved for airports became a normal part of public life, a new layer of concrete and protocol designed to create a sense of safety in a newly dangerous world. Beyond the borders, America's foreign policy underwent a radical shift. The doctrine of deterrence, which had defined the Cold War, was deemed ineffective against stateless terrorist networks. In its place emerged the Bush Doctrine, which asserted America's right to launch preemptive war against perceived threats to its security, even if those threats were not immediate. This doctrine led the United States first into Afghanistan in October 2001 to dismantle al-Qaeda and overthrow the Taliban regime that harbored them. Then in 2003, based on intelligence that was later proven flawed, it led the nation into a second war in Iraq. These conflicts, which became the longest wars in American history, would dominate the nation's attention, drain its treasury, and cost thousands of American lives, not to mention countless more Iraqi and Afghan lives. The Global War on Terror, as it was officially named, became the new open-ended framework for American engagement with the world, moving the nation from a post-Cold War peace dividend to a state of perpetual shadowy conflict. While the government was restructuring security and launching wars, the social and cultural landscape of America was also being quietly remade. In the immediate aftermath of the attacks, the country experienced a powerful, if fleeting sense of unity. American flags flew from porches, cars, and bridges. There was a surge of patriotism, a collective mourning, and a profound sense of resilience, embodied by the phrase, "United we stand." Political divisions seemed to melt away, if only for a moment. But this unity was fragile. The trauma of 9/11 created a deep undercurrent of fear and anxiety that would soon be channeled in less unifying ways. A new pervasive culture of fear began to take hold. The 24-hour news cycle, now a permanent fixture, endlessly replay the terrifying images of the collapsing towers, fueling a sense of imminent danger. The color-coded terror alert system, introduced by the new Homeland Security Department, kept the threat level constantly in the public consciousness, often with little specific information, creating a state of vague background dread. This atmosphere of fear had a dark side, a rise in suspicion and xenophobia, particularly directed at Muslim Americans, South Asians, and anyone who appeared to be of Middle Eastern descent. Hate crimes spiked in the weeks and months following the attacks. Sikh men, mistaken for Muslims because of their turbans, were particularly targeted. The term racial profiling entered the common lexicon as a debated security tactic. For millions of Americans, their faith or the color of their skin suddenly made them objects of suspicion in their own country. This period also saw the normalization of enhanced interrogation techniques, which many around the world condemned as torture, as the government grappled with how to extract information from captured suspects. The national conversation was forced to confront difficult questions about the balance between security and the civil liberties and moral principles the country claimed to uphold. The transformation extended into the very heart of American culture and storytelling. Before 9/11, our blockbuster heroes were often fighting aliens or cartoonish villains. Afterward, a new kind of hero emerged, the gritty, realistic first responder. Television shows, movies, and news coverage began to celebrate the courage of firefighters, police officers, and paramedics in a way they hadn't before. They were no longer just background characters. They were the embodiment of American strength and sacrifice. At the same time, a wave of dark, complex television dramas like 24 reflected the nation's new anxieties, exploring themes of terrorism, torture, and moral ambiguity in a world where the old rules no longer seemed to apply. Even comedy changed. The sharp, ironic, and often cynical edge of the 1990s humor gave way, for a time, to a more earnest and heartfelt tone. The cultural psyche was processing a collective trauma, and its art and entertainment became a mirror of that painful, ongoing process. Perhaps the most enduring transformations were the subtle psychological ones that became woven into the daily lives of Americans. A generation of children grew up in a world where 9/11 was not a history lesson, but the foundational event of their reality. They practiced lockdown drills in school alongside fire drills. They learned terms like terrorist and homeland security at a young age. For them, a world of high security, shoe removal at airports, and a nation at war was not a change. It was the only world they had ever known. The attacks also fundamentally altered the American relationship with news and information. The chaotic, real-time coverage of that day created a public hunger for constant updates, a demand that cable news and the fledgling internet were all too eager to fill. This accelerated the move toward a 24/7 information cycle that, in later years, would profoundly impact politics and contribute to societal polarization. On a deeply personal level, the sense of safety that once defined the American psyche was replaced by a lingering low-grade vulnerability. The world suddenly felt less predictable, less manageable. The knowledge that a mundane Tuesday could be shattered by catastrophic violence introduced a new kind of awareness. People became more conscious of their surroundings in crowded places, of unattended bags on subway platforms, of the flight path of a low-flying plane. This was not necessarily a state of constant panic, but rather a recalibration of risk, a quiet acknowledgement that the unthinkable was in fact possible. The new normal wasn't just about security theater, it was a psychological shift toward a more cautious, more anxious existence. 2 decades later, the legacy of 9/11 is everywhere, even if we no longer always see it. It's in the TSA agent at the airport, the security barriers around a public building, the ongoing veterans care for those who fought in the wars that resulted, and the continued debates over surveillance, privacy, and immigration. The unity of those first few weeks has long since faded, replaced by deep political divisions that were, in part, exacerbated by the wars and security policies born from that day. The global war on terror has evolved, but it has not ended. The sight of the Twin Towers is a memory for some and a historical image for others, but the world they left behind is the one we all inhabit. September 11, 2001 was more than an attack. It was a catalyst that set in motion a chain of events that altered America's trajectory at home and abroad. It redefined the nation's role in the world, reshaped its government, and left an indelible mark on the American character. A reminder of both our profound vulnerability and our enduring, if complicated, resilience.